Good afternoon. Welcome along to the webinar. My name is Mike Beaver. I'm the CTO at Principal Networks, a highly specialized cybersecurity partner. We're going to be looking at some cloud security concepts, and we're going to be discussing why playing whack-a-mole with your cloud security is probably not the right approach. With me today, I have Neil Camden, a senior solution architect at Principal Networks and a Wiz certified expert, and Charles Lenton, who is a account director at Principal Networks as well, who is working actively on a number of Wiz opportunities. The format for today is relatively simple. I am going to run through some slides very quickly. You'll all be pleased to know. And then I'm going to hand over to Neil and Charles, and there's going to be a fireside chat interactive demo. It's a new format that we've been experimenting with, and we felt that this was a really great way to get some of the more practical questions across when we're looking at concepts of cloud security. By cloud security, I'm really looking at CNAPP, so Cloud Native Application Platform Protection, and CSPM, Cloud Security Posture Management. Two areas where Wiz really specializes and dominates the market. I'm sure you've all seen the news recently that Wiz was acquired by Google. We've been working with Wiz for a good long time now, and have been very excited by that transition. So without further ado, let's set the scene. Fundamentally, cloud changed everything. Okay, we went from being in complete control. Code was written in-house. It was written on our development servers, written by our in-house developers. We pushed that out through our pipeline onto our servers, running in our data centers with our perimeter security. And then cloud came along. We all took advantage of cloud, the model where we could amortize costs, we could make it someone else's responsibility. We improve flexibility, scalability, resilience, all of those wonderful things. We've been doing this for a long time now, 2 decades, pretty much. It changed how we approach dev, though. So now code, and we're not even going to talk about vibe coding and AI code, but code is now written by our developers in a number of different environments. It is run in the cloud, not necessarily even on servers anymore, but in runtime environments, infrastructure as code, platform as a service, those types of things. And that fundamentally has to change how we approach security. Okay. Security no longer is perimeter based, it is cloud based, and it cannot afford to be verticalized anymore. An attacker doesn't care. Very, very simple. He will go after, or she will go after, whatever part of um, that entire process, that entire pipeline that they feel most able to breach. I can breach any point of this, and I am now in control. I am in the middle of that process, and I can do things to both deny service, I can do things to exfiltrate data or capture data, or I can run simple disruption. Okay. That could occur anywhere along this code to pipeline to cloud to runtime environment. Okay. They don't distinguish where it's running. They don't distinguish what it's running on. They don't distinguish the application itself. They simply want to find a way in. Okay. Security is still vertically stacked. We have our DevOps security, so DevSecOps. We have our perimeter security still, or our cloud-based security. We have our CNAPP, and we have our runtime security. So all of these things stack vertically, not really talking to each other that well. Maybe we're feeding them into a scene tool, but they're not really collaborating. There's no holistic vision. There's no end-to-end process or end-to-end management of that security. Doesn't really work anymore. So what we'd like to show you today, what we'd like to talk about is a way to take that verticalized silo security, democratize it. One of the most key things as part of this security concept is the democratization of security. Spread that horizontally across that entire life cycle from code all the way through to the runtime environment that it's operating in, and show you how it's connected, where those vulnerabilities are, and more importantly, the context behind those. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Charles. I'm going to hand over to Neil and let them walk you through some live examples of what you can see and how easy it is to achieve that for your own environments.
Thanks for that, Mike. Yeah, so what Neil and I are going to do now is we are going to take you through the Wiz platform. We're going to have a look at some of the key features. So, Neil, over to you. You're driving. Where would be the best place for us to start?
Okay, so the first screen we're looking at here is the inventory. Now, as Mike mentioned, Wiz is essentially a CNAP, cloud native is important. So in order to bring this inventory into the Wiz platform, it utilizes API calls into your cloud providers. Just a simple API call once your Wiz platform is set up, and within literally minutes, you have this full view of your cloud infrastructure from start to finish.
Yeah, and Wiz is a multi-cloud tool, isn't it? So we are covering all of the major cloud providers. And as you can see, it's very visual. So again, we're scanning the entirety of the environment, aren't we, Neil? So if you want to touch on some of the things that we see within Wiz and some of the specific data that Wiz pulls out.
Absolutely. So in terms of the inventory, it's every component of a cloud infrastructure from code through to cloud and applications. So we've got virtual machines in here, we've got frameworks and libraries, we've got network infrastructure, we've got database servers, we've got S3 buckets, we've got identities in here, and we've got code CI/CD environments as well. So everything that is involved in a code cloud environment, from developing that code through to publishing that cloud out on the internet, we see it in here. So you get that full end-to-end multi-cloud view of everything that makes up your cloud environment.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point to make, isn't it? Because there are tools out there that will scan parts of this infrastructure in isolation. But obviously, one of the things that Wiz is doing is pulling all that together and consolidating that for us.
Absolutely. It's putting that all together, and it's doing it without the need for any agents or clients or software. So it brings this in very, very simply, very quickly, without the need for a bunch of infrastructure to connect Wiz to your environments.
And I've seen that. I've seen this kind of view be presented in hours. So now that we've got a comprehensive view of our cloud infrastructure environments, where do we go next? What's the next step?
Okay, the other aspect of the Wiz platform is the vulnerabilities. So this view here is all the vulnerabilities that have been found across our entire discovered infrastructure. So that inventory that we showed just now, these are not just vulnerabilities that are out in the world. These are vulnerabilities that are active currently on that inventory. So you can see the numbers there on the left. There's some very high numbers split into critical, high, medium, low. CVEs, misconfigurations, known malware, exposed secrets, everything that's considered a vulnerability is shown in this view here.
Yeah, as you say, so we've got almost 1 million there if we add those numbers up quickly, and we can see there are 8,000 that are considered critical. And again, this is where most cloud tools stop. Long lists of potential vulnerabilities without much context, and it's that context here that's key, isn't it? So we know that we have all of these vulnerabilities across our cloud environment. How do we know what to prioritize and what we should fix first?
And that essentially is the USP of Wiz. That's what Wiz does that the other platforms don't do. It pulls all that information in, all that inventory, all those vulnerabilities, all those misconfigurations. What it does then, it puts them into a great big graph database. It does a process of discovery, enrichment, analysis, and prioritization. And what comes out at the end of that is a bunch of issues. Now, an issue is a whole collection of toxic combinations. So just because a server has a CVE on it, for example, doesn't mean it's something you have to worry about if that server is not reachable on the internet or if it's only in production. Just because a server has visibility to a data bucket, it doesn't matter if that data bucket is just test data. So you can see here the open issues are massively reduced from our original findings down to just 199 critical issues and a bunch of high and medium. So it just allows you to focus on where to put your attention to improve your security posture as quick as possible.
Yeah, again, it's that context, isn't it? What's at risk? What's exposed? How is it exposed? So let's walk through an example then. Let's dive into one of these critical vulnerabilities and have a look what's going on.
Okay, so bottom left here, we've got some top issues. If we look at this fourth one, for example, this is an internet-facing server or serverless infrastructure that has known vulnerabilities, and it has access to sensitive data in the background. This 11 here means that this vulnerability or this toxic combination is found on 11 different components. If we click into this,
Yeah, and this is the bit that I like because this is very visual, isn't it? This is the attack path visualization.
It is. So at the top here, we've got a bit of plain English about what this vulnerability means, what the risks are to the business. And here we get this visualization of what's going on with this toxic combination.
Yeah, so brilliant. I mean, again, really, really simple to understand, really detailed, really visual. Can you walk us through what's going on here from left to right, Neil, so we can see why this is considered a toxic combination?
Absolutely. So on the left here, we've got the internet. We've got an application that is reachable and visible on the internet. It's running on an EC2 instance, we can see here. An application or an operating system on that platform has a known CVE. You see this at the top here. There's an AWS role that is running the application on this server. You can see this little crown on top of this icon here for the IAM role. That shows that this role has admin access. And that role itself then has access in the background to some S3 storage buckets, some of which have this little jewel sitting over the top, which indicates that this is sensitive data. So in this one view, you can see internet access, application, identity, vulnerabilities, and data all in one view.
Yeah, and again, really important to reiterate here that the fact that there is a CVE is a problem, but it's not the problem, and it's not the reason this is considered a critical issue. It's a critical issue because of those toxic combinations of issues that potentially expose sensitive data. So, given that, let's say that we're running a large team of IT administrators, developers, security analysts across our hybrid cloud environment. How do we go about now remediating this? We know that there's an issue. What should we do?
Again, starting from the left, we have to ask, does this application need to be reachable on the internet? That's the first question. If, for example, it only requires internal access, we could get rid of internet-facing access. We could also use a technology such as VPN, or more common these days, a zero trust network access solution to control who comes into that currently externally facing surface. You can do a lot of zero trust and identification as to who people are before they even reach it. So if it's not reachable on the internet to the general public, then it's a lot lower risk of an issue anyway. It would make sense to fix that CVE. If there's a known CVE on an application, you would upgrade that application. We'd probably look at that IAM rule as well, based on the ideas of least privilege. We would look at that role and say, what does that IAM role need to run this application and have access to that data in the background? It probably doesn't need administration. It might need read-write, might only need read. So look at maybe tying down the access that has. And then finally, we'd look at those data buckets on the right-hand side, check that the data that's being exposed to this application is what should be being exposed. And for instance, the one at the bottom there is called AI training test. So that's an S3 bucket. I would imagine it's probably been created just for test purposes, but it's still got that little jewel on it. So it has sensitive information in it. So there's a lot of areas you can look at here, but this single view allows you to dish out the various remediation tasks here to the different teams who need to do it. You may have a different team for data, for internet access, for servers, for application.
Yeah, really important point. It gives you that ownership, doesn't it, to be able to say to those teams, well, here's an issue that we need you guys to fix.
Absolutely.
Okay. One thing I did just want to go back to, Neil, was we talked about this being an internet-facing endpoint. One question I had was, how does Wiz know that?
If we have a look at the attack surface management.
Another one of our key vendor partners is Zscaler, and they'll talk about the idea that if it's reachable, it's breachable. So obviously we know potentially that things that we can see on the internet do put our business at risk. How does Wiz know that?
Yeah, so this is part of their EASM features. So external attack surface management. And again, some customers will have a dedicated tool that does this. The way Wiz does this is it has probes out on the internet that are connecting inbound to customers' environments. So where the inventory is identified that you have some web servers, for example, available on certain IP addresses, these probes will come in and will connect to those IP addresses and do searches to see what ports are available and how they can connect. And you can see here, it breaks that down into different categories. There are some web servers here that are visible on the internet. There are some storage buckets that are visible on the internet directly. And on the right here, we can see in the technologies, it's the Wiz engine has identified whether some of these are Unix, whether they're Apache web servers. And one of the really nice features you get here is where it does bring up a front page. Wiz stores an image of that front page. So here, for example, going to this customer's IP address, it brings up an application on port 80 called CR API. That would allow a potential attacker to know that application is being run on that IP address on those ports, and they'd be able to then go into their toolkit and look at, have I got any exploits that can attack this specific application?
Yeah, really cool stuff. But again, it's important to remember the point's not necessarily that Wiz is fantastic at scanning multiple environments and scanning our attack surface, even though it is brilliant at that and there is a lot of value in that. The point is that it's pulling all of this together into one platform and then prioritizing those findings based on what's exposed so that we can really assess and understand our level of risk, isn't it? And then just to go back to a point that we touched on earlier, we saw with those icons, again, those very visual icons, that Wiz is able to scan our cloud data repositories and identify sensitive data. How's Wiz doing that? And what does it, how does it classify that data as sensitive?
Yeah, just a very quick look into this, because this is the DSPM aspect of Wiz, which we can go into in a load of detail. We won't do it today, but just briefly, you can see here some of the data stores that Wiz has found. It's found these and categorized them using regex, using a bit of machine learning, and using some known dictionaries. It knows what emails look like, it knows what financial information looks like, knows what personally identifiable information looks like. So based on that knowledge, it said these data stores have some sort of sensitive data in. This can be further enhanced because Wiz is a true cloud-based platform. It has API integration into tools such as Sierra, for example, which will then look at what's in those stores and will put some context behind that data and that information. So with the addition of Sierra on here, you would understand, for example, this is a customer email, or this is an internal email, or this is financial information relating to a partner or to a customer. So it adds a load more context and allows you to get really deeply into who's accessing your data, what they're doing with it.
Yeah, again, really interesting stuff. And this is all part of Wiz Cloud, isn't it? But since we do have some time, I think it's also worth us having a look at Wiz Code, because one thing we know about cloud that Mike touched on as part of his introduction is that organizations love to do dev work in public cloud environments because it lets them build, ship and scale software faster without worrying about infrastructure constraints. We've also seen plenty of talk recently about secure by design and shift left. So Neil, if you wouldn't mind, could you explain first, what do we mean by shift left? And could you show us what Wiz Code is all about?
Absolutely. So shift left is the concept of looking at your code in development platforms and at the stage where the code is being written and put together, as opposed to the right-hand end of that idea is code that's been published on the internet. And these days, Mike mentioned vibe coding and AI coding. We're not going to go down that alley today, definitely not. But it's really important to understand what's going on in your code before it's put into UAT or into production environments. So the shift left is starting to look at that code before it's even made public.
Yeah, so how would organizations manage that historically then?
Again, Wiz are doing nothing groundbreakingly new here. There are tools out there that will constantly review and check your Git infrastructure, your Jenkins infrastructure, AWS code, for example. But traditionally, these are tools that are run by the DevOps and the DevSec teams. So the rest of the organization, your network guys, your infrastructure guys, your cloud guys may have no visibility of that at all. Because code now so quickly evolves into cloud and into applications, Wiz gives this view where in a single pane here, you can see everything from code right through to CI/CD pipeline, through to the applications it's on. And you can see GitHub is in there, Jenkins is in there, AWS code is in there. And it's this single point from which you can see the entire end-to-end process of how your code's being developed. And in here, for example, we can write some policies that will look at the code as it's being written, as it's being developed. It will check if there's any secrets being exposed in your code, any sensitive data that's being exposed that shouldn't be, any known vulnerabilities. If people are using code libraries that have known vulnerabilities, that can be picked up at that left-hand end of the process before it gets anywhere near being reachable on the internet.
Yeah, and that prevents costly rework down the line once we identify potentially issues in UAT or in production.
So I know your dev guys are. Sorry.
So I'm just conscious of time, Neil. So I know we didn't want to talk too much about AI and vibe coding, but unfortunately I'm going to make you, because this is a webinar and it is 2026. So we have to crowbar AI in somewhere. But we see now that more and more of our customers are utilizing LLMs like GPT or Claude to help write and develop code. And that only strengthens the use case for a tool like this, doesn't it?
It does. It's important to know what your devs are writing. And like we said, with concept of vibe coding, they may not be even aware of what some of the code is that they're publishing. So really important to have a view of this early on. Also really important that the whole business have a view of this. So the nice thing about the Wiz platform, you can delegate the certain screens that look at the Wiz code side of things and the development pipeline. You can hand over access and remediation to your dev team for that. You can hand over remediation for your cloud-based services and your applications to your app team, and you can hand over responsibility for the network part to the network team. But the whole thing is viewed in one platform. So if you have a compliance officer that needs to know that your code is compliant before it's going out, or a CEO that just wants a view of, are we secure and are we safe as an organization, this platform gives you that view right across the entire cloud platform.
Democratizing cybersecurity, as Mike mentioned earlier. So that's a really quick overview of the platform in 20 minutes. There's far more that we'd have liked to show you. We could be here all afternoon. But hopefully we've been able to demonstrate that Wiz can help you consolidate multiple siloed tools into a single source of truth, that it can present a single view on all known risks and vulnerabilities, but then crucially help us prioritize what to fix first with the graph database and the attack path visualization. But also that Wiz helps us prevent releasing vulnerable code into UAT or production and reduces rework by scanning that code at source. So I am, because we've only got 5 minutes left, but I am going to hand back over to Mike to wrap us up. But thank you very much, Neil. That was brilliant. And obviously, if anybody does have any specific requests for a deeper dive into the Wiz platform, then contact us. We'd be very happy to do that.
Great. Thanks, Charles. Superb webinar as always. Good to get just even scratch the surface of what Wiz can do in that world. Ladies and gentlemen, if you do have any questions, please pop them in the chat panel. You should have a Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom client. If not, reach out to your friendly Principal Networks account director. They are more than happy to talk specifics around how Wiz can help your environment, show you individual bits and pieces, or even talk cybersecurity in general. Is what we're here to do. It's what we do all day, every day. And it's what our partners, spouses, and otherwise better halves have to suffer us talking in the evenings half the time as well. So with that, enjoy the rest of your days. Thank you very much for attending and giving up your time, and we'll see you on the next webinar. Thank you.